11:46 a.m. It's Monday, July 15, 2024. This is a short video documenting another iteration of the perpetual sex offense that the state, a public entity, is engaging in while it practices federal group stalking and monitoring, which is also demonic activity. It needs to be known. You need to understand. Demon possession, in other words, having the spirit of Satan on you. The affect of demon possession on a human being is the equivalent of having the mind state, making the decisions of, having the personality defects, the perverted and predatory desires and actions and conduct of a sex offender, an exceedingly violent sex offender, a deranged sex offender. And that is what is operating over this entity that's engaged in group stalking. And this pattern of conduct of stalking with activity creation, which is the demonic behavioral pattern. So you're understanding what is the template. So you are now understanding that demonic template is what the demon possessed practice while they maintain real-time knowledge of the fact that you are in a private space, that you are engaged in any personal private activity, and what it is that you're doing in that location in the midst of that private activity in whatever state that you are. And so I'm not going to speak in ambiguities, and I'm also not going to mince words. This is sexual violence, which needs to be spoken to, and it needs to be openly shamed, and it also needs to be prosecuted. And it also, as a bigger point, is that it needs to be understood this is demon possession that is simultaneously being exposed. So if you do not want to be a sex offender, then you need to repent because the spirit of Satan that is operating on you is the spirit of an exceedingly violent and predatory sex offender, which is why you're engaging in sexual violence while you're group stalking someone. And I am speaking to the entire state, whether I know your name personally, or whether you are working for a corrupt law enforcement agency, or whether you are living at a crime scene, whether I visited and you engaged in group stalking me in traffic. You have the same condition, you have the same situation, you're operating in that you are a sex offender. Because there is no discrimination with regard to your pattern of conduct, regardless of the state of that targeted individual, where you act with a sexually violent purpose, while aware of the condition, the status, the location, and everything that the target individual is doing. And your purpose is also to psychologically torment. You intend to inflict sexually violent harm while you engage in stalking with audible activity creation. And so I want to make sure I speak to that. I'm not only speaking to the prosecution for a sex offense, and again, this is breaking ground regarding what the government is doing and how the government shall be prosecuted, because this is the pattern of conduct. This is the criminal system that the government is engaging in, and the government shall not, and under any circumstances, be given any sort of relief or immunity for its criminal act. And the evidence is supporting that. So like any other sex offender, like any other stalker, you're going to be prosecuted. And as you are group stalking with the people of the state, by the way, while they have the exact same demon possession, the exact same condition, this is what you will be prosecuted for. And you need to understand, let me give you greater context. You have the spirit of a sex offender on you, which is why you're practicing sexually violent and criminal conduct. All right, so while I am inside of my bathroom in my apartment, which I want to be clear, let's break down the private space. The private space is the dwelling, wherever the target individual lives, even if you live with a third party. So I live at a facilitating venue. My apartment remains the private space where I am subject to a criminal act by the government. And that will not change. It does not convert, because the government has engaged in practicing federal group stalking and monitoring everywhere that I go. You will just be prosecuted for invading that private space as the sex offender that you are, like any other sex offender, crouching outside of your window, recording you while you're relieving yourself, and keeping you under surveillance and stalking you, and seeking to terrorize you while doing so, and wanting to, I hope that I can violate her, make him or her feel violated while I engage in stalking and methods that he or she is aware of, while their genitalia is exposed, while they're necessarily touching themselves, while they're in a private space, while they're engaging in that private and personal activity. And I'm also a violent sex offender because I'm acting with the whole population in doing so, including in the unheard unheard of method of stalking in helicopters while seeking to engage in that direct or vicarious conduct. So Jose and Sons Landscaping, this is the third party, and he's first of all engaged in federal stalking. He's at a crime scene. Like I said, this prosecution is not difficult. The foundation is already laid. You are literally going to be prosecuted for everything that the government is doing to the population. This is criminal presence. They're here every Monday. Systematic facilitation, federal prison. If you're not a natural born citizen, you will be prosecuted. And the fake sun is over me as I'm documenting it. Not only upon leaving my office, so you'll see at 11:14, I walk out of my office. Who's crossing path while the entity is stalking in helicopter? Let's get that. The whole crime scene, what I'm capturing. I walk out of my office and the entity is indeed engaged in tracking my steps. While I walk out, so that you can see the timestamps, 10:54, LAPD is flying in relevant position. This is group stalking in a helicopter in the specific environment while the fake sun is over my head, while they're stalking in the path in the sky space. Walking out of my office is where I'm at, and you will see stalking in the path at the crime scene. These are third parties of this is Song Chu of 1810. Let me give you exactly who the son, and Sang Lee. This is, again, 1810 number 2. Song Chun is group stalking with the LAPD. She's going to federal prison. And then you have what is, no, that's not Sang Lee. That is 1812 number 4. That's Dong Kim. And they're both group stalking while LAPD, and they're doing so as I walk out of my office, they're in position. And all they're doing is maintaining presence in the immediate environment and doing so while a fake sun remains over my head. This is as I'm walking out of my office, so I want to be clear. And then you have Jose and Sons. They are in the path, they're monitoring, and they're also engaged in surveillance on the venue of the internet for purposes of crossing path. And this is crossing path even if I would have walked in the opposite direction along the sidewalk to get to the front, my other front door. Okay, the fake sun goes where I go in alignment with me, and so do the people of the state. The group remains around me all the time. This is how you're understanding what group stalking is in that remarkable environment where the state is stalking in helicopters. In this environment where an entity is tracking my steps, group stalking, doing so also on communication devices, and using that which they have at their disposal. This is nothing but a prop where a demon is going to stalk you with audible activity. And this sexual violence is what I'm subject to while they are group stalking under the malicious guise of coming to the property every Monday to engage in audible activity creation, demonic pacing and engineer light activity creation, and criminal presence, relevant positioning. The elements of monitoring, practicing federal group stalking and monitoring with the government. That's not coincidentally stalking in a helicopter, both in the presence of Jose and Sons, which is the individualization of that prosecution commercially and personally when they're prosecuted. But it's not a personalized crime that only Jose and Sons is engaging in. Jose and Sons is just doing their shift. They're just arriving every Monday, engaging in the criminal pattern of conduct that the whole state, the whole population is engaging in. All right, and because you want to facilitate that every Monday, that's systematic facilitation, you want to go to federal prison for that. In addition, you want to be outed as the sex offender that you are. This is what is maintaining the light source as I go to my front door, which is what I'm capturing at 11:14. Moments earlier, these sex offenders are pacing all around in engineer light as opposed to engaging in any lawful operation of a business, just cutting the grass and weed whacking. They are doing so pursuant to their knowledge of what I'm doing as I'm doing it, and you know that because of the unnatural environment that they are doing it in. They are cutting grass and weed whacking and walking around and doing so with the rest of the population who's pacing all around also, and also stalking in helicopters. I'm going to show you the analysis of what the entity was doing while they knew that I was documenting this on my phone, which is also relevant to the sex offender that seeks to terrorize you while you want to enforce your right to not be subject to sexual violence. Okay? The entity is using this weed whacker as a means of amplified audible activity while I am inside of my private space, panties down, genitalia exposed, legs wide open, and the demon waits until the moment that I open my legs and necessarily touch myself when I'm relieving myself, and then use the sound of a weed whacker, which is audible activity, to monitor me, and doing so with the sexually perverted purpose of also offending. Remember, the entity is monitoring and terrorizing one whom they know is documenting it. So this is this is relevant to the enhancement for the terrorists who continue to pose an impermissible threat while they are fully apprised of the fact that you seek to enforce your rights by virtue of documentation, because you're engaged in surveillance online, on the internet, on communication devices. So you're a whole other beast of a sex offender because you wait until the moment till I open my legs and my genitalia is exposed. And that's when Satan wants to sound the use of a weed whacker, which is nothing. And it will be prosecuted as nothing less than audible activity under the fake sun that's over my apartment. All right, while I am inside of a private space inside of my apartment, and audible activity by use by way of a weed whacker in relevant position. This is understanding what is the predatory and sexually violent pattern of conduct by the entity that engages in federal group stalking and monitoring. And I want to be clear, the entity is engaging in a sex offense while it's kidnapping me inside of the state facilitating venues of West Valley, Glen Helen Rehabilitation Center, and Central Detention Center in Rialto, California. It will not cease to be a private space while I am physically indisposed and using the facility, the bathroom inside of my cell. You will be prosecuted as a sex offender. That's what group stalking is. I'm being molested with engineer light inside of the facility. They're crossing path, waiting until I pull my panties down to use the bathroom while they're obsessively monitoring on the cameras. Remember, this is not the lawful operation of a jail, of a facility. This is group stalking, where the fake sun, replete with engineered light, demonic pacing, where they have multiple shadows, and all those demons are doing are bearing weapons and wearing badges and handcuffs. Those are props, just like this weed whacker is a prop. Okay? You will be prosecuted as a sex offender that you are while you are engaged in kidnapping inside of the facilities. That's exactly what I was subject to, and that's exactly what's documented on those facility cameras, which is my evidence to prosecute the state of California. The entity is maintaining the elements of monitoring while it is aware of the fact that I am inside of a private space. That's a sex offense. Aware of the fact that my panties are down, and engaging in the elements of monitoring, relevant positioning, light activity creation, and audible activity creation, and using the amplified use of a weed whacker to fully communicate that sexually violent threat that I'm monitoring you, and I'm monitoring you while your genitalia is exposed, while you're wiping yourself. That's what Satan wants to do. That's what Satan is doing, and using the third parties of Jose and Sons to do that. So I want to be clear, not only do you need to repent, you will be prosecuted for the sex offender that you are, group stalking with the state of California. And I want to make sure that you also understand the entity that threatens my life as I enforce my rights and document the sexual violence that I am subject to by third parties who are maintaining relevant positioning and systematically arriving every Monday to terrorize me with LAPD, who repeatedly sound helicopter activity and amplify it, creating sensational activity as though it's an earthquake while they're stalking in a helicopter, because they know very well what it is that I'm documenting about third parties such as Jose and Sons who are going to federal prison if they're not natural born citizens. They will be deported like any other demon a part of the LAPD. They're going to be deported. All right, so the entity is engaging in sexual violence and then seeks to, and remember, the sexual violence is pursuant to group stalking. You're engaged in terrorism. You like to engage in sexually violent methods of terrorism, which is having the spirit of a sex offender. That mind state, that desire to wait until that state of the target individual, that's what you're prosecuting. I want you to understand the harms, not only to that person that has the spirit of Satan on them. You're walking around being a sex offender, and you are what you do. You're a group stalker, you're a terrorist, you're demon possessed, and you're also a sex offender. And I'm going to prosecute you for that. And it is also a duty to make sure everyone else knows the harms and the threat to American society, because sex offenders are in custody of minor children. The ability to target another in a sexually violent way, which is, let me be clear, this is the P.O.C. 24 hours. They keep engineer light in my apartment. They keep engineer light in my office. They keep a fake sun over me all day long. There's no sun over the Paul Bryan Library today, contrary to what I documented on this day in 2022. That's not the sun. That's the P.O.C. These demons are pacing in and out of the bathroom, a private space at the Paul Bryan Library. That's the sex offense by a population. That's the state. You are making superficial distinctions when you're looking between what is the state that's stalking in a helicopter. Oh, it's the state that's stalking in the bathrooms as well. It's vicarious conduct, pacing all around on behalf of that state in the specific environment. And it's demonic activity. The demon possessed that are acting like cockroaches, an infestation of the demon possessed in California who are group stalking. And these sex offenders like to follow into bathrooms. They like to stalk with activity creation while they know you're in a bathroom. They like to do even more of it as you enforce your rights against being subject to terrorism in the workplace, in a private space where you have a right to not be under surveillance while your genitalia is exposed, while you're engaged in private personal activity. And the entity that is keeping you under surveillance on the internet knows exactly what it is that you are documenting about its sexual violence. It is currently 12 p.m. It's July 15, 2024. This is P.O.C.